I've been a martial artist since I was 4 years old. If you see that hanging right there on the wall, that's my first black belt plaque that I got when I was 11 years old. Martial arts was always something that I strived to be really, really good at. And, it all got taken away from me young because I was having these medical issues. I get to run a mile in less than 7 minutes and 30 seconds for the first time in 20 years, do deadlifts again, and take my daughter to Disney World, spend 13 hours at Disney World carrying her on my shoulders when she's too tired to go to the next ride. Sign me up. I'll take the heart attack. Bring it on.
Okay, good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? We have a guest today. Darby is here, so I'm see if I can find Darby. And Darby, if you can unmute yourself. There you go. Look like you're off mute. So, good morning. How are you?
Yes, sir. Good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Where are you coming to us from? Where are you located?
I am in Greenwood, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis.
Greenwood, Indiana. Yes, I spent a number of years in Indiana, up in the northwest corner, up there near Gary and Hammond, Indiana, a little town called Dyer, Indiana, where I went to part of my high school career. So, anyway, welcome and thank you for doing this. So, can you just let's just kind of get a little bit about what's going on with you. What's your background? Tell us what's going on.
I've had allergies lifelong. I got tentatively diagnosed when I was probably about 5 years old. I got the skin prick test when I was 11 or 10. I was 10 years old when I got this skin prick test. I ended up being allergic to hundreds of trees, weeds, grass, mold. I was allergic to honeybee stings, dander, like dog, cat dander, stuff like that. And I ended up having to have reconstructive sinus surgery when I was 11 years old due to the massive amounts of sinus infections that I was getting. And we didn't really know what was caused. They just kept kind of pumping me full of C-chlor and, antibiotics like that, thinking that was going to solve the problem. And it didn't really. Somewhere along in there, I had to have my tonsils, my palatine tonsils and the other standard tonsils taken out from mass infection. Then I did allergy shots and stuff like that, and it kind of got a little bit better. I never really had allergies to food. But then getting after high school, I started to have heart palpitation issues. Not really too severe until probably 2013. But I kept being told, "Hey, don't drink caffeine. Don't, it's this or that." Of course, I got accused of being on drugs a couple of times. That was fun. And then in November of 2015, I ended up being hospitalized due to severe tachycardia with atrial fibrillation. The first time that I went to the hospital, I went in an ambulance, and I was driving when I called 911 because I blacked out behind the wheel and came back to, luckily still driving down the street and not wrecked in a ditch or anything. And my heart rate was 196. My blood pressure was 198 over 167, I believe. And I was in full atrial fibrillation. And then they got it under control with medication, Cardizin and metoprolol. And then 2 weeks later to the day, I was back in the hospital, same problem. The drugs wouldn't work. So I got hit with 150, 200, and 250 joules 2 times a piece, respectively, to cardiovert me. Mm-hmm. And luckily enough, the doctor, Dr. Chung, at IU West Hospital in Avon, Indiana, decided that he was going to run a thyroid panel on me and found that my thyroid hormones, my T3 and T4, were through the roof. My TSH was completely plummeted, and I had Graves' disease. Got treated for Graves' disease, ended up getting a lot better, gained a bunch of weight back. I was about 123 pounds when I went into the hospital. I'm 5'6". That's a bit skinny for me. And then in January of this year, January 15th of this year, I was put in the hospital. My blood glucose was 591. I've never had issues with that before in my life. I ended up testing positive for the GAD65 antibodies, and later on, going to an immunologist, he tested me for the other ones, and I ended up also being positive for the IA2 antibodies. I was scared because the only thing that I could think was what was next, what's coming next. Allergies are autoimmune. Graves' disease is obviously autoimmune. Type 1 diabetes is obviously autoimmune. And if I've slowly, progressively gotten more and more of them as I've aged, what am I going to get next? Am I going to have, MS? Am I going to, what's coming next? On top of that, I'm terrified of hypodermic needles. So I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to do something? And I kind of hit my knees and put my head down and prayed for an answer. And lo and behold, I was messing around through YouTube, and I stumbled upon you and Dr. Kinberry initially. So I started watching video after video after video after video, and then I stumbled upon Dr. Chaffee, and realized that maybe my issue has been plant material this entire time. What is it? What is it that is causing my body to attack itself? Is it the oxalates? Is it the lectins? Is it, what is it exactly? I don't really know, but what I have figured out is that from, stumbling upon your videos to, about the end of March, I transitioned from the standard American diet to a 100% carnivore diet. It took about 2 weeks, and I didn't need any insulin anymore. By April, about mid-April, I didn't need methimazole anymore, which, as you know, is the standard treatment for Graves' disease. That's a thyroid hormone suppressant. I did have my labs run for the thyroid antibody and the GAD65 antibody run in February 11th. I had them rerun on October 10th, so almost 8 months exactly. Unfortunately, the GAD65 antibody test that they run here cuts off at 250. So it just says greater than 250. So I don't know where it was to begin with or how much it's come down. But the thyroid antibody, the thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin autoantibody test, here in Indiana, it measures in percentage. So in February, it was 301%. October 10th, it was 198%. So it had dropped 103% in just 8 months. Which is something that I had, since 2015. That's 7 years that I had it, and it was always very high. I mean, the dose for maintenance on Graves' disease with methimazole is about 5 milligrams. I was taking 30 when I went to the hospital in January. I was taking 30 milligrams of it. So, I mean, my thyroid hormone levels are completely normal. And I mean, they're like dead center in the range of what is normal. They're not like high normal or anything like that. And my TSH is still low, but I mean, the attack is still happening. So that's probably normal. But I think that, getting into this diet, it really truly has healed my body, and it's healed it in other ways too. Like the allergies, I usually have 2 to 3 sinus infections a year. I haven't had one this year at all. I think I've had maybe 8 days worth of symptoms between spring, which I usually always get a sinus infection in spring, and then ragweed season, which just ended. I had like 5 days of symptoms of ragweed, the itchy eyes, the itchy palate, a little bit of an itchy throat, a little bit of a runny nose. But I didn't get an ear infection from it either. I usually get sinus infection so bad that it backs up into my ears. It's absolutely amazing. It completely blew my mind. And it's strangely satisfying. I do not have a craving to want anything but meat anymore. I see things and think, I wonder if I could make that carnivore. Like I actually attempted for my niece who has celiac disease, to make chocolate chip cookies out of pork rinds. And bless her heart, she actually said that they were pretty decent. I didn't try any because I'm still trying to get rid of that. But, her being a kid and not understanding all of it, she doesn't really understand that, hey, if you just don't eat plants, that might actually just go away forever and you won't have to worry about it anymore. But I can't say how thankful I am. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, for what you and people like Ken Berry and Anthony Chaffee do on a daily basis to try to help people, because it really truly is amazing. It's a miracle like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, I was told that you can't cure this. This is where you're going to be for the rest of your life, and maybe at some point I may have to be on insulin. But I don't think so. I really don't. Like the studies that I've seen and the studies that I've been pointed to by your podcast and things like that, especially with the high dose vitamin D, which I fully plan on starting here pretty soon. I go to back to my immunologist on Monday, as a matter of fact, and he actually seems to be very open to the fact that there are ways that this can be managed forever, so to speak, i.e. also cured. And I'm going to talk with him about it to see if maybe not 50,000 IUs, but maybe a combination of, getting some artificial sunlight here in the winter. Obviously, don't get a great deal of it here in Indiana in the wintertime, but maybe some artificial sunlight with, maybe 10 to 20,000 IUs plus, eating some organ meats, maybe, to try to supplement that and get it the best way possible. But I have the utmost confidence that this can be cured. And if it wasn't for, you and Dr. Ken Berry and Anthony and Dr. Anthony Chaffee, I would have never known. I would have just stayed being sick on the SAD diet and getting sicker and probably gaining type 2 diabetes on top of the type 1 diabetes, chasing the glucose numbers with insulin injections. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, certainly it's an amazing story, and yeah, we're all trying to get the message out there, and it's frustrating when a lot of our stuff gets censored and shadow banned, and it's so because we're impacting people like this, and again, we're still learning, and there's still a lot of research. I'm very excited that there's going to be some studies on autoimmune disease and carnivore that I heard about, that I'm kind of in the background, kind of helping to direct in a different. There's a lot of things I'm doing behind the scenes, but there's a couple things in here, because you start out with the allergies, which a lot of people can identify. A lot of people have sinus infections, and that's a great thing. And then many people aren't familiar with Graves' disease. I mean, a lot of people have heard of the hypothyroidism and the Hashimoto's, Graves kind of being the opposite side of that coin where you just,
Right.
your metabolism ramps up so much and you lose a lot of weight. And I'm just wondering, because it's kind of similar with type 1 diabetes, is that, you can't store anything, you lose weight. So maybe both of those things are going on concurrently, perhaps. And there is a relationship between the thyroid and diabetes. Also, we know that when someone gets an autoimmune disease, they're much more likely to get a second one. And so it's like, what is the underlying mechanism? There are people out there that do think that our gut has a large role in that. And then what affects our gut? Obviously, what we eat. I mean, that's not that hard of a leap to make. A lot of people in the diabetes world, particularly type 1s, will be scratching their head and saying it's impossible. You can't come off insulin. And, you were able to fortunately catch us in what's many people call the honeymoon phase, the early on time. And it's nice to see that the antibodies are dropping, which, maybe you'll end up, maybe it'll preserve enough beta cell function to where you may not need insulin, for either a long period of time or, knock on wood, maybe forever. That would be really cool. I want to ask you, because this has been going on, you said about 8 months now, and you've seen all these, obviously dramatic improvements in all these things. Physicians involved in this, have they noticed this? Have they commented on this? Is it still yet to be determined? Are they like, I'm just kind of wondering what happens when a physician is faced with, because they're not seeing a lot of people do a carnivore diet, and they're not seeing many people where the disease just kind of sort of goes away on its own. What's been the response, or if any?
Well, I can tell you that the first physician that I had when I just had Graves' disease, my first endocrinologist, he was, I would say, pretty standard. He wasn't interested in diet of any kind to fix Graves' disease. But when I got type 1 diabetes, that's what I think what really, really kind of turned my mind to, there are a great many physicians out there that aren't here to really make people better. Because, basically what he told me was, you can eat as many carbs as you want to. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure you give yourself enough insulin to cover it. What does that mean? The reason why I say it that way is because what human being or creature, what creature on planet Earth, mammal, reptile, amphibian, says, okay, I can eat as many carbs as I want to, as long as there's enough insulin to cover it. There is no such thing as you knowing what that is. Your body does that for you. Your body has innate intelligence, i.e., if there's too much glucose in your blood, your pancreas is going to go, well, if we leave this here, we're going to die. So here's the insulin to get rid of it. Obviously, there are other issues that can come with that, excessive weight gain, storage of adipose tissue in places where it doesn't belong. But it shocked me. It truly shocked me that he was like, no, it doesn't matter. Your diet doesn't have anything to do with this. And I'm like, essentially speaking, a type 1 diabetic is allergic to carbohydrates. Like, if they eat them, they will die. So what is it that you can eat that will cause you not to die? And at the time, obviously I didn't know, but he was more interested in writing me prescriptions than helping me figure out how to manage this in a way where I'm not, and I'm not injecting 60 to 80 units of insulin a day to keep from having astronomically high glucose levels. So long story short, I stopped going to see him. I started with a new doctor, and he was more willing to entertain the idea of helping to control it with diet. But in getting those labs back that I spoke to you about recently, with perfectly normal T3 and T4, free T4 and free T3 levels, free T4 and reverse T3 levels, and the antibodies dropping so drastically, he still wants me to take methimazole, which is kind of it's kind of boggling to me, given the fact that if my thyroid levels are normal, my hormone levels are normal. If I'm taking even a maintenance dose of methimazole, like that could put me in hypothyroid state, and that's not good either. Like neither one of them are good. So why would you want to do that? And when I questioned him on it, he kind of didn't have anything to say. He didn't know what to say about that. And then I asked him, about the drastic drop in such a short period of time in the antibodies, and didn't really know what to say about that either. He said, well, it is possible that you could go into remission. And I'm sitting here thinking, Doc, I've been on a ridiculously high dose of methimazole for over 6 years with no change. And I come in and tell you that I'm changing my diet in this way. And then this huge plummet happens, and you don't have anything to comment on it, or maybe, hey, we want to take a closer look at this and monitor it more closely. We're going to do, an antibody test every 3 months for the next year or something like that. No, that's, again, it seems more like they're interested in writing the prescription and getting, when the prescription is filled, getting that kind of, dividend payback with, for doing that, instead of actually making people better. And one thing that I've been, incredibly convicted of since finding all of this information and following this kind of, carnivore protocol is I got to figure out how to help people, because I was lost, and I'm just not that kind of guy. I grew up, I've been a martial artist since I was 4 years old. If you see that hanging right there on the wall, that's my first black belt plaque that I got when I was 11 years old. I got my first black belt from the World Taekwondo Federation in the state of Indiana at 11. I got another one in judo when I was 19. I've been wrestling and boxing since I was 4 years old. I'm a pretty tough guy. I'm a pretty sure guy. And I was terrified. I didn't there had to be a way to not be sick like this. I mean, I'm not sick. I was an athlete. I was always, strong, fast, played basketball, played football, even though I'm too short to do that. I got killed playing football. But I enjoyed it, and then martial arts was always, something that I strived to be really, really good at. And, it all got taken away from me young because I was having these medical issues. There's got to be a way, and there is a way. It turns out there was a way. There is a way, and it turns out it has to do with, like Dr. Barry says, a proper human diet. The reason why you're sick is because you're eating 80% of your calories and plant material, and we were never designed to do that. Our appendix is about the size of the end of our pinky finger. Where in apes, it's 4 feet long. We don't have the ability to ferment fiber in our guts anymore. So we don't get any nutrition out of that. And it causes disease because of it, because it's not what we're meant to eat. We're essentially starving ourselves inadvertently by believing, this pyramid scheme, as I like to call the food pyramid, that we should be eating this way. But it seems as though everybody has bought into it, physicians included, to answer your question. And that's scary to me. It's sad to me as well.
Well, it's a couple comments. I think, with regard to the physician, they're not really getting paid to prescribe medication. Sometimes they have bonuses that are tied to percentage of people on these. There's not direct payments with that. And I think honestly, your physician just doesn't know. I mean, he's never been faced with this probably situation before, and they're just kind of clueless. So they don't know how to deal with it just because they don't think about curing disease anymore. It's really just symptomatic management and medications, medicine. It's physician as a healer is not much anymore. It's more just physician as someone to manage symptoms, which is quite sad to see that. And, fortunately, like I said, I know that there are studies that are going to be coming out that are going to be looking at exactly what you're talking about. So hopefully we'll be able to educate more physicians on this. And so we can use things like diet that can, be potentially curative. And it's too early to say whether or not you're cured or not, but certainly quality of life is clearly much better. I mean, you're not having
million times better. Million times better.
And that's what we want at the end of the day when it comes to why do we go to a physician I think to feel better, to have a better quality of life, and if that just means taking pills to move numbers around, I don't know that that's doing what it's supposed to. Let me just ask you specifically about the diet a little bit because people want to know that. So what are you eating? What's on your carnivore diet? What does it look like for you?
Well, after I got down to strictly carnivore, which was, like I said, the end of March, I quickly went on the lion diet for 100 days. Actually 110 days. For 110 days, I ate nothing but beef or lamb, salt, and water. Mm-hmm. Now, after 110 days of that, I went back to eating a little bit of pork, eggs, and chicken every now and then. I love chicken wings. I get chicken wings cooked in tallow, and then I basically take a stick of butter and melt it and pour it over the top of it and eat it if I do have chicken wings. But I am, I absolutely love eggs. I don't eat too much in the way of seafood. If I do, it's like sardines maybe, or mackerel, whole, preferably bone in, just for the minerals. And they're small enough and soft enough that you can chew them enough that your stomach acid just annihilates them. You don't get any issues or anything like that when it comes to that. I have found experimenting with cheese that cheese does cause irritation, and the number one sign of it for me is gas. I don't really have gas unless I have cheese, or I fast for an extended period of time, which, as I understand it, long period fasting can cause, the leaching of oxalates and stuff like that, which can cause, death of microbiome and things like that. But typically, I'll eat ribs, pork ribs, steak, hamburger, and eggs with salt and butter. That's pretty much all I eat. I am whittling it back down to steak and eggs, mm-hmm. as typically that is what you tend to use as well. I don't ever seem to have issues with eggs. I don't ever have issues with beef, so I figured I'll take it back down to beef and eggs with some butter and some salt for probably obviously Thanksgiving. I might have some turkey. Christmas, I might have some ham. But other than that, I'm probably going to cut it down to just that, so that the next time that I get an antibody test, it can, I want to try to keep with a specific diet and see how that affects the antibodies. Because I mean, 110 days of beef salt water. Obviously, I think that probably had something to do with it, because I wasn't introducing anything inflammatory whatsoever in my body for a good long period of time, which I think that probably sped up the healing process significantly, and so that's typically what I stick to. From actually tomorrow is when I'm going to start just back onto the beef and eggs with some salt.
You I didn't hear any organ meat in there, which I think is fine. And you're seeing good healing. Are you focusing on only grass finished beef, or are you eating just kind of stuff in the store? What is your thought on that?
So it's great that you brought up the organ meat thing, because I completely spaced saying anything about that. Earlier, I did mention that I'm going to be introducing some organ meats again. When I first transitioned, I ate organ meats a lot, and that seemed to help speed up the process of getting off medications. And I think that it's just because I was so depleted of real nutrients for so long that, my vitamin levels were, and I did have my vitamin levels tested. Some of my vitamin levels were off, specifically A, D, K, my B vitamin, my B3, B6, and B12 were all low. My electrolytes were low. And all of those things have improved now. I think getting to a healthier spot, you may need those at first. Depends on how sick you are. I think, but I think I'm probably going to add liver back in for the sole intensive purpose of the vitamin D and vitamin A, and vitamin K, to try to help boost that number with the supplementation for the vitamin D protocol for autoimmunity. But as far as beef goes, grass fed, grain finished, grass fed, grass finished, cow, elk, deer, what have you, buffalo. I don't think I've really noticed a difference, because I have tried both. I did a couple of weeks there where I was only eating grass finished beef, and I didn't notice any difference as far as how I felt. I think that's the magic of ruminant animals. To be perfectly honest with you, maybe the cows are a little bit leaner if they eat grass. I'm sure that the difference in vitamins from one to the other, per gram or per ounce of beef probably isn't that much different. I don't really see there being that much difference in it. The fat content's a little higher in grain finished beef, which I'm not particularly mad about. I quite enjoy beef fat very much so.
Yeah, fat is definitely the flavorful side, and it's something that I think some people would argue that humans have traditionally hunted heavier, bigger, fatter animals for a long period of time until they became more or less extinct, and we had to rely on leaner animals. So we may be programmed to eat a little bit fattier animal in some regards, and so that's why people prefer that. I know most people will say they prefer meat with more fat on. Not everybody, but most people do. Do you, as far as the diet, people around you, family, friends, are they giving you a hard time about this? Or are they like, hey, this is great to see you getting healthier? What's been the response?
It's been a mixed bag, honestly. I have been able to help out a couple of members of my family. My brother-in-law actually, he started, and he's he's keto because he still drinks energy drinks every now and again. I mean, he probably not every now and again. He drinks probably one every other day, I would say. But as far as eating eating breads, pastas, and vegetables and fruit, he's cut that completely out. And he has a degenerative disc disease and severe compression of his sciatic nerve. I'm sorry about that. Sure. He's lost in the last 2.5 months. He's lost 28 pounds and noticed significant improvement, not only of the pain, but also of the function of his leg as well. He is due to have surgery because he does have a massive bulge in it. But even just, losing some weight, dropping the inflammation, seems to have really helped him. And he's been nothing but completely appreciative of that. And then, I've got my dad and my grandmother who are adamant that I'm going to kill myself eating this way, that I'm going to have a heart attack. And my dad's type 2 diabetic, and he still won't get rid of the grains and the plants, particularly and the seed oils with the chips. Man, the dude can eat a bag of chips in one sitting. I'm like, Dad, it's going to get worse. You have to stop. But they think that I'm crazy. But others. My sister is slowly trying to transition. She doesn't have a gallbladder anymore, so it's a little bit more difficult for her. But she's noticed that she's not as she sleeps a little bit better, so she's not as fatigued all the time, relying more on fat than carbohydrates. And her daughter, my niece, that has celiac disease, they're slowly removing all breads, regardless of whether or not there are gluten in them, from all the kids down there, just to try to help them and get a little bit more healthy as well.
Yeah, it's interesting how some people respond, and I mean, clearly, because they would have seen you suffering for years with the various diseases. I mean, clearly they would have seen that, and now to see you not being on all these medications. Let me ask you, when you had this, 500 plus blood glucose, obviously, everybody's going to think, well, God, it's definitely likely diabetic. And you get, I'm sure they put you on IV insulin and things like that. How long were you taking the insulin shots? How long did it take for, and what made you decide to stop taking them? I mean, obviously maybe your blood glucose was normal, but what was, how did that go?
So 2 weeks, I was on insulin for 2 weeks. Within 24 hours of leaving the hospital, I had already watched probably 7 podcasts with you on it. I was hospitalized for 2 days. I had probably watched like 20, 5 to 6 minute videos of Dr. Barry's, specifically about type 2 diabetes and reversing type 2 diabetes and the underlying causes of type 2 diabetes and things like that. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, this has got to play some factor into this. I was doing what I was told, but I transitioned to about 100 carbs or less for the first week, and then 50 carbs or less in the second week, 30 carbs or less in the third week, 20 carbs or less. And by the time I got down to, less than 20 carbohydrates, I was becoming hypoglycemic. And at the time, I felt like garbage being hypoglycemic because I wasn't fat adapted yet. It had only been 3 weeks. So I had to stop taking the insulin. And by hypoglycemic, I mean, I was getting woken up by the Dexcom, feeling delirious, trying to make it into the kitchen, being dizzy and everything like that with blood glucoses in the 60s and 70s. By the time I got off the insulin and everything like that, I was having blood glucoses in the 50s. The Dexcom was reading, in between 75 and 85. When I had blood drawn, my blood glucose was actually like 51 same day. in front of the doctor. So, but about a week or so after that, I had become fat adapted. So the 50s didn't bother me. It was perfectly normal. I felt fine. It only took about 2 weeks for me to not need insulin anymore. I got sick once. Pretty sure that I got COVID. I got up into the 200s between 200 and 230. I just didn't eat for about 24 to 48 hours. And then, blood glucose came back down to normal. Ended up getting over that, got, ate about 48 hours, after the blood glucose was that high, and then it came up to about 140 and then it just came back down to normal. I seem to have no issues with it, so to speak. And also, since May, because obviously a lot of times switching to a carnivore diet, your body does kind of like a reset. I got down to 121 pounds in May. I am, as of last Friday, I'm 145 pounds.
Yes.
With no insulin. So I seem to be producing more insulin even, on top of that. So I'm hoping to get some, a new C-peptide run here pretty soon to see what's going on with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about it, see if they check C-peptide. So when they diagnosed you, you kept saying, you're watching videos reversing type 2. Did they diagnose you as a type 2 or a type 1? And then when you were diagnosed, often they'll have a diabetic counselor come in and talk about diet and nutrition. Did any of those things happen for you?
Yes. No to the type 2 diabetes. The on-call doctor was smart enough to run the GAD65 antibody test while I was in the ER. Obviously, that came back positive.
So let me just for people who don't know, the GAD antibodies are often indicated in type 1 typically. It's autoantibody against the beta cells. Yeah, okay. So that was high. So they thought you had an autoimmune diabetes, correct? Type 1, probably.
Correct. Interestingly enough, I didn't mention this part, but I didn't have any issues prior to Christmas with any of the symptoms at all. None whatsoever. But the symptoms in the 2 weeks before I went to the hospital were very intense. My A1C when I went in was greater than 14%, which means that my blood glucose had to be astronomically high for 2 straight weeks at least. I got it retested 3.5 months later. It was 5.0. The diet really, really works. It's super impressive, but to get back on track, the reason why I was thinking that something had to at least link, from type 2 to type 1. It's a reaction. It's a reaction of your body to something that you're putting in there that does not belong there. Whether the reaction is type 2 diabetes, where you become, quote unquote, insulin resistant, your cells are desperately trying to keep you from creating, more fat cells, or is it that you're that you're becoming, that your body's going to start attacking itself, with autoimmunity. I really don't think that they're particularly unrelated. I mean, obviously they are different diseases, but it's just what is consuming that amount of plant material going to do to you? What is your genetics, kind of predispose you to be sick with? I wholly believe that the cause is the same. And I think that was pretty evident for me when, all of that came back, that I had just one more autoimmune disorder.
There's somewhere we can talk about the autoimmune stuff, and there's a lot of stuff we don't know yet. I mean, there's a lot of research that needs to be done around this. But let me ask you about, because you mentioned you were big into martial arts and, an athlete. Are you able to still do that now? Are you back to exercising, or are you just been dealing with all this stuff too much to do that?
At first, the martial arts, not yet. That's mainly just because of time constraint. I 100% want to get back into jiu-jitsu so badly. But as a matter of fact, I will be watching the UFC fight tomorrow. That's my little outlet for martial arts now. But I did get back into lifting weights, which is absolutely amazing. I've had 2 knee surgeries. The transverse ligament in both of my ankles is actually kind of hanging on by a thread. I've thrown punches my whole life. I broke my hands. I broke my hands and torn ligaments in my hands a couple times. Tore the joint capsule in my right elbow into 5 pieces. The alar ligament on the left side, attaching my atlas vertebrae to my skull, is pretty much gone from judo. So exercising for a long time was just incredibly painful for me, and I can do squats again. I did 10 reps. Monday I did 10 reps at almost my body weight. First time I've had that much weight on my back for over a decade. I mean, I graduated high school in 2005. Before that, and it's not painful. I can squat calf to hamstring. I haven't been able to squat down to tie my shoes calf to hamstring for 20 years. I'm 36 years old. I haven't been able to do that since I was 16. That's incredible. That's amazing. I did double overhand grip with no straps, deadlift, 160 pounds, 10 reps, not bump stopping, dead stop, butt up, re-squat, pick up the weight. And I did it with no rest. And I haven't deadlifted in 15 years. I haven't been able to, like my knees would not allow it. And I mean, I know that deadlift is mostly a posterior chain power, movement, but you still got to bend your knees. It's the leg press until you get above your kneecaps, and I just couldn't do it. And not only have I been able to do that, but I can run. I did a mile in a little less than 7:30 the other day, just to see if I could do it. I haven't run a mile since I was in high school. I haven't run a mile since I did the presidential physical fitness test my freshman year in high school, and I ran the same mile. I ran the same mile time just a couple of days ago, and I've been able to do things that I never thought I'd be able to do again. I did the barbarian, challenge from Liver King the other day. Didn't do it as heavy as he did. Obviously, I'm about a third that man's size. 145 pounds. I don't think I could pull off 70-pound kettlebells in each hand plus 70 pounds in a backpack for a mile. I don't know if I could do that or not, but I had 120 pounds of gear on me. And then I did a mile like that, and I was able to do it, within about 35 minutes. I think I pulled it off in 35 minutes. Just incredible. The amount of pain that I used to be in, that I just don't have anymore. It's truly impressive. I used to have periodontal disease. And by used to, I mean, I no longer have periodontal disease or gingivitis. That's gone. And I didn't do anything differently. I didn't change my toothpaste or floss more or, anything like that. My gums are now a beautiful light shade of pink. They're no longer inflamed and red and bleed every time you touch them. Literally, the overall health is just astronomically better.
Yeah, it's clearly for you, you've had this tremendous gains. I mean, the overall quality of life, just not being in pain, not getting all the allergy, sinus infections, obviously the Graves' disease, the diabetes, all of that is, I mean, undeniable how much better your quality of life is from what you're saying. And there still will be people who will say, well, hey, your cholesterol may go up and therefore you're putting yourself at risk for heart disease. What do you say to that? I mean, even, we're not sure if it's true or not. I mean, as far as, overall risk, maybe your LDL cholesterol and that risk factor went up, but overall risk may or may not be up. But let's assume it is. Let's just assume you've increased your risk for cardiovascular disease by, 10, 20%, just to throw a number out there. Is it more important for you to have quality of life that you have now, or are you more worried about that?
I won't deny that there aren't really definitive studies out there that prove that. But the only reason that I think plaque gets put in your arteries is for the sole intensive purpose to keep your artery from bursting, because there's been damage done to it by glucose levels being entirely too high. But to that, I would say this: if my heart is going to stop beating because my LDL or HDL or triglycerides are too high, the trade-off to that is I get to run a mile in less than 7 minutes and 30 seconds for the first time in 20 years. I get to do deadlifts again and practice jujitsu and throw an arm bar, a gogoplata that I can run, teach my nieces how to play volleyball and basketball and softball, take my daughter to Disney World and spend 13 hours at Disney World carrying her on my shoulders when she's too tired to go to the next ride, which happened, by the way, in June. Sign me up. I'll take the heart attack. Bring it on.
Yeah. And I don't know.
They can put a stent and fix that.
Right.
I mean, if that's the case, which I don't believe that for half a second, because, I had a stress test. I passed it. I know I can take my heart rate to 190 plus beats a minute at the age of 36 and not feel like I'm going to die. And I can do it day after day after day. And if you can do that, I've had an ultrasound of my heart and the arteries of my heart, and there's nothing in them. I plan on doing it again next year to see if there's anything in them. And per watching your podcasts and your clips on YouTube, I plan on having is it a CAC, correct?
Yeah, that's
plan on having one of those too.
That's one that can be helpful. Again, you just, like I said, some of it depends on how old you are, because you're still pretty young on the young side, so you're probably not going to see much at this point, but it's fair enough. And I think that's, you clearly and I think we all should have that option to make the argument for what does my quality of life look like versus potential theoretical risk. And I think most of us would choose quality of life for various reasons. And anyway, Darby, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I just appreciate it. This has been a wonderful story. I'm sure it will raise a lot of questions for a lot of people and hopefully inspire a lot of people. If I don't know if you participate in social media much, but if you do, is there a place where people can find you and hear more about what's going on?
Yeah, so I don't at the moment. I'm actually working with a friend of mine right now to set up a YouTube channel to kind of start journaling all of this. Yeah. But I also have been very interested in sharing, my labs and everything like that with someone like you that could actually put them to use. Maybe that's something that I've been very interested in. That's why I was completely honored when you offered to let me come on here and kind of share the story and things like that. So if there's anything that I can give to you that would help with studies or even be a part of a study, I'd be interested in that as well. But no, I don't have any social media. I kind of try to stay away from that, to be perfectly honest with you. But I do know that a YouTube channel does need to be started for this journey to help people that are coming into it. And I'm working on that currently.
Yeah. Well, and I encourage you to do that. I think that, it's because, it's the more people that share their stories, the the harder it is to deny this stuff. Because people say, well, it's just an anecdote. But, when there's literally thousands upon thousands upon thousands, it's hard to ignore. So,
that's called data. It's called data.
Yeah, sure.
When there's that many.
Right. It's all data. And people say, well, it's confounded and there's other things and so on and so forth. But after a while, it becomes overwhelming. And I think we're getting to that point. Anyway, like I said, it's been wonderful getting to chat with you and meet you. Good luck with continuing. Let's keep us posted. I'd love to see what happens with the, with the long term with the autoimmune issues, because if you can put it into remission or quote unquote cure them, that is something important. I think we need to really explore that. So anyway, for the rest of you guys, we'll be back tomorrow. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much. Otherwise I'll have a great weekend. I got to go, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, Darby.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day, Dr. Baker.
Bye-bye, guys. Hey, folks, it's Dr. Shawn Baker here. If you guys are enjoying these success stories, well, you can become your own success story. You can do that by heading over to CarnivoreDiet. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial and get started today. We're looking forward to supporting you. Our community is wonderful, and we'd love to see your success.